The 5 weirdest cars with retro-futuristic design. Hey guys! For over 2 decades, retrofuturism has become a common part of modern car design philosophy. For those who don't know what that is, retrofuturistic design is when car designers borrow shapes, form or details from car history and try to revive famous models from the past. Cars like Volkswagen's new Beetle, the Ford Mustang and the new Mini are all examples of revivals in modern form. These were achieved by designers taking classic shapes and turning them into modern vehicles with unmistakable charm, lines, and appearance. During the height of the retrofuturistic fashion, it looked like any car with classic lines would be a sales hit, so many manufacturers decided to introduce such models. As always, there were some that implemented this style perfectly, and others that failed miserably. Today, we will discuss the latter. Here are 5 of the weirdest examples of retrofuturistic design, cars that lost their way between the past and the future and will remain in the Twilight Zone. Number 1. The Plymouth Prowler. Hot rod culture is one of the key ingredients to the American automotive landscape. However, no company dared to present a factory-built hot rod until 1997, when Plymouth introduced the Prowler. It was a retrofuturistic roadster with a V6 engine and weird looks. Obviously, the designer intended to create a modern hot rod roadster with a low body, exposed wheel arches, and a small windshield. Even though the Prowler was an initial success, sales very quickly stalled, and Chrysler lost a lot of money on this model. Although the concept was sound, the realization was just wrong. People will always like cool classic hot rods, but if you take away all of the classic characteristic design elements such as chrome grills, bumpers, louvers on the bonnet, and so on, you will end up with an amorphous shape that nobody really wants. Besides that, the Prowler only came out with a V6 engine, breaking the first rule of hot rod culture: a big V8 is a must. Number 2. Mitsuoka Vute. In case you ever wondered what would happen if you combined a classic Jaguar Mark II and a Nissan Micra, don't worry, we have the answer: the Mitsuoka Vute. This crazy retro-futuristic car came from one of Japan's obscurest brands, which is dedicated to building retro-inspired cars based on ordinary models. The Vute was introduced back in 1993, and it still is in production. The chassis, drivetrain, doors and glass are all from regular production Micras, but the front and rear end are unmistakably Jaguar, complete with chrome grille, bumpers and headlights. The Jaguar Mark II is one of the best-looking British sedans ever made. Still, when its characteristics front end is transplanted onto a cheap Japanese compact car, elegance and appearance are gone, making the Vute a bizarre and repelling model. Fortunately, they're only sold in Japan and are quite expensive, so production is limited. Number 3. The Lancia Thesi. When retrofuturistic fashion stormed the car industry, Lancia's designers realized that they could borrow from their rich history. During the 50s and 60s, Lancia made some of the best-looking cars in Italy, a significant accomplishment considering the many famous design studios located there. Models such as the Aurelia B12 and the Flaminia sedan were the most elegant Italian sedans of the period and well-respected classics. Back in the early 2000s, Lancia desperately needed to get back in that luxury segment of the market, so a big 4-door with retro looks seemed like a great idea. The Thesi then subsequently appeared in 2001, but the car community was confused. It was definitely an interesting and luxurious car with clear retro influences, but it wasn't pretty. In fact, it wasn't even close. It looked ugly, unfinished and out of place. It didn't help that it was filled with creature comforts, or that it was powered by a high-revving 3-litre V6. It was a sales flop and pushed Lancia deeper into oblivion. Number 4. Chrysler PT Cruiser. Even though the PT Cruiser was widely regarded as a substandard model in terms of power and technology, it was immensely successful, although very, very ugly. It managed to sell over 1.35 million units over 10 years. The PT Cruiser's appeal was its faux retro design, affordable price, and wannabe cool image of the custom cars from the past. Although many car enthusiasts weren't sold on its retro-futuristic hype when the PT was introduced, the car was undeniably a sales hit. It was probably the last big sales hit for Chrysler. Under the hood, there was nothing special, and the PT Cruiser shared a lot of its mechanical design as well as its engines with the Chrysler or Plymouth Neon. This meant that the PT Cruiser wasn't particularly engaging to drive and very ugly to look at. Number 5. The Toyota FJ Cruiser. When the retro-futuristic craze swept the car industry, Japanese companies had a problem. Although they had their classic models to borrow inspiration from, most European or American customers didn't actually know about them. As far as Europeans or Americans were concerned, the Japanese companies didn't have any history. So, what to do? Rediscover classic Japanese cars that were already widely recognizable in Europe and America. For example, the legendary Land Cruiser FJ40. Toyota decided to revive this iconic shape in the form of a modern-day SUV named the FJ Cruiser, introduced in 2006. Intended primarily for the American and Middle Eastern markets, where the original Land Cruiser was well known, the FJ Cruiser had some success, but also drew a lot of criticism for changing the original narrative. The classic FJ40 was a rough and capable off-roader, while the modern FJ Cruiser was an expensive big SUV. It also featured a weird side-opening door and relatively small luggage space. So there you are. Thanks for watching. Cheers!